UB is more than just a name, much more than buildings, books, and grades. It transcends time. It defies space. It is enduring, a grand idea. It cannot be confined or changed. Its influence radiates near, far, wide, permeating these walls, this land, our skies. It soars aloft. It rides the tides, transforming, reconstructing, metamorphosing lives. It was a very quick, can you come in and help us? And my answer when it comes to Belize and anything that was Belizean, when it came to building the country, helping people, was a yes. And so I came in as a novice, unprepared. And therefore, what I found when I went to UB at that time was really difficult, very tumultuous. And what I had to work with was really a big challenge. Most of the faculty and staff were not happy about the amalgamation that had taken place with the 5 institutions that eventually became what UB is today. In its genesis, there was so much questions about why amalgamating, and it was a tremendous job because if you think about it, we were doing in a short while, pulling together major professional institutions that had long histories. Belize Teachers College, Belize Technical College, the School of Nursing, the School of Agriculture, and then the University College of Belize that had a fairly established operational system that mimicked to some extent a university, but the other institutions, they didn't have that. And so when that amalgamation took place, it was something to behold. There were demonstrations, there were all kinds of things going on. And I'm telling you, when I was asked to go in, as I said, I wasn't prepared. And my major job was to make sure that somehow I could get these disparate requirements, disparate desires to amalgamate and to coalesce in a way that would be positive. And I think at the end of the day, it did happen. And that was my first year at the University of Belize. Communication for me was very important. I spent a lot of my first year just engaging with faculty, engaging with staff, and making sure that they knew that my commitment was 101%. It wasn't easy, as I said, because I came in from kind of a left field. Nobody knew about me or knew anything much about me except where I was at Belize Technical College. And interestingly enough, Belize Technical College was one of the founding institutions. And I think it was the institution that had the greatest difficulty with that amalgamation. And in some ways, I felt like a traitor because I wanted, one, to connect with my UB colleagues because there were many people there that I knew. But how do I balance that? And it was really a difficult balancing act, trying to be a president and encourage them. And my major job was to make sure that somehow I could get these disparate requirements, disparate desires to amalgamate and to coalesce in a way to join what I felt was really a good thing. It did happen by the end of that year. And that was my first year at the University of Belize. I always felt that my job was to be able to get people together, get them to work together in the interest of the institution, provide the support they needed to feel that they were respected, to feel that they were relevant, to feel that they were important, and to make this institution called UB the best we could make it for whatever time we had to work with it. And it's really heartwarming for me to see that today there are some of the people who were there at the very beginning of the University of Belize when I went in. who are still there, holding the fort and really providing significant support to the university, which I think today has done a lot for the University of Belize. UB became a very important part of my life. It's a part of my history that I think I will never ever forget. And it shaped me in so many ways, although I came in very late because I had already retired in terms of retirement age in Belize when I came to UB as its president. I think one of my strengths was I had gone through the Belize Technical College, and Belize Technical College is another defining point for me because that institution was mainly males. There were hardly any women there. And when I became head of department, all the lecturers, they were pretty much all male. They were chemistry teachers, math teachers, physics teachers, science teachers, whatever and all the engineering department and they were all headed by men. And so I was and I stood my ground with them, and they accepted that. And so when it came to going to UB and the challenges I found with, what was going on with them at the time when I went there for my first year, I didn't back down. I'm always quiet, and that used to be a comment that always would be made. We hardly hear you. But when I had anything to say or when I had anything to do, there was no question about that. I was used to facing challenges in working with staff, working with, people who didn't always want a woman leading that. And so when I went to UB, that really wasn't an issue for me, being able to be there and to deal with what I had to deal with, in spite of any objections or issues they may have had with me. I believe I always was able to get them eventually to accept me as being genuine and as doing what I felt was in the best interest of the institution and the people who were working there. We did a lot of collaborating and engagement with other institutions abroad. And I took the message of UB to as many institutions in the Caribbean, in Central America through SICA, which was one of the organizations with which we collaborated quite a lot. I went to places like Guyana because we were trying to find other institutions that could help us to grow because we needed that. And these institutions, North Florida is one of the big ones for us at that time. The University of the West Indies was another big one at that time. And in fact, we had 2 chancellors from the university visit Belize. And what we were able to create eventually with the institution and what we have now is a respected institution that has sent students far and wide. Networking with regional institutions helped us to get our faculty trained. We had to make sure that those who didn't have bachelor's degrees and those who didn't have master's degrees, and we also needed people with PhD degrees. We needed all of those levels of professional standards in our faculty in order to get the kind of accreditation we need for the institution. A lot of what I was able to do, with support, of course, from the faculty, was to link with those international and regional institutions to develop the kind of programs that we are able to deliver today. I remember sitting late nights at the campus of Belize Technical College with faculty who needed to go abroad to study. They ended up going to places like Taiwan, the University of the West Indies. They were able to advance their professional academic levels because of many hours that we spent together working on those kinds of issues that were critical. The larger Belize politics had a lot to do with the financing of the University of Belize. because that was another big, big challenge. All these campuses that came together to form the University of Belize were not in the best of shape. Many of them were needed resourcing. The plant was, in many cases, damaged, needed repairs, and the money we had, or the funding we got, the subvention we got, was not a lot. And when you're dealing with one campus and you have a small group of faculty and staff working those campuses, it operates very, very differently when they are all amalgamated. And you have to work at combining all of those pieces. The separate pieces operating alone and the combined pieces when it's all one big system. And then we also had things like salary scales, which were all different for all those institutions. And when they came together, the issue of finding ways in order to make all of them feel that they were, at a level where they're university faculty now, you're working at a university now as staff members, and the required remuneration for that kind of level work needed to have some tweaking and some adjusting. And the adjusting process for those kinds of issues proved to be very, very traumatic for me, in the sense of finding ways, because, it started out, okay, you're coming from government now and you're at a private institution now, and these salary scales that you're being paid as a government. And then there were also things you carried over because you're government and now you're a private institution. There were issues related to those things that made the politics of working with the university another challenging area. The Faculty and Staff Association was I think it was a watershed for the university when the Faculty and Staff Association was formed. They did something that I'm not sure any other faculty and staff association would have managed to do at any other university anywhere. Perhaps it's possible, but I don't think so. I had a board of trustees that was heavily government, in terms of the number of them who were government related. And they requested of the university, at the request of the Faculty and Staff Association when they were formed, to submit to the board a recommendation for how the university should be structured administratively. Now, the Faculty and Staff Association was relatively new, very active, and they were a force to be reckoned with. And the board requested to have 2 recommendations for how the university should go forward in terms of its administration. The faculty and staff needed information to do that. And I remember they came to me for information. The second recommendation was to come from the administration itself to the board for what they recommended for how we should go forward in terms of administration of the University of Belize. Now, I found myself caught between the two. The administration basically said to me, don't give them certain kinds of information. That's to the Faculty and Staff Association, because they came to me. I'm quite good at communication. I'm quite good with people. And so I had a good relationship with the people heading the Faculty and Staff Association. And I had to decide, do I give them the information or don't I? And I felt, in all fairness, that they should have that information, because it was information that it wasn't private information. It wasn't information that in any way jeopardized the institution for them to have. And so I made sure they got the information. My administration didn't like that. because they said I was siding with the Faculty and Staff Association. I was not siding with them. My thing is, I believe in fairness, and I thought it was important for me to give them what they were asking. I didn't in any way influence anything they were doing. 2 recommendations were submitted to the board. And the board, in its wisdom, I guess, selected that was submitted by the Faculty and Staff Association. And that thing created significant stress for me within the administration because it took away vice presidents' positions and created deans. And when it created deans and 1 provost, the faculty, the administration didn't like that because it meant from their perspective that they were being demoted. Vice presidents had to become a dean. People who were vice presidents became deans. And there were a greater number of deans than there were vice presidents. There was a dean for each faculty compared to 1 provost or 1 vice president academic who controlled all the faculties and had chairs instead of deans. When the Faculty and Staff Association's recommendation was accepted, the vice presidents were moved out. There was 1 provost, and there were a number of deans for all the faculties. And so that became an interesting and a very defining point at the University of Belize. The students, I think, define what a university becomes or what a university is, because they carry so much energy, they carry so much, they are the lifeblood of any university. Faculty can have all the degrees they have, but if they don't have those students who are active students, who are the energy they generate, the views, the viewpoints, the activity they bring to any. I remember I always used to love the student orientation period when I used to always have a day or an hour or so when I would go to the gym and all the students would be gathered there, and I would welcome them and with students on a regular basis, because they always have so many things going for them, and they always, when you get to know them and when you get to connect with them, they're what gives you reason to hope and to, because they're the future. They will carry on whatever it is that we do, whatever we offer them. They're the ones who are most important in the life of a university. I tried to start a alumni association when I was there, and that's something I think somewhere there are lots of graduates out there from the University of Belize who I believe can and should do their best to give back to Belize and to that institution that has allowed them, I think in many cases, to pursue careers. We've had people who've gone to become lawyers and doctors, and both in academia and in some of the professional areas, surveyors and all these areas that Belize needs. I would like to make an appeal to graduates from the University of Belize. The university is still building. It's critical that that institution gets the support that it needs from everybody, from all Belizeans, but more so from those who have had the benefit of the services it has provided for them. When I came back to UB at the very end, it was a sudden request, really, by government to have a new president installed. And I had no problem with that, because my position is always, I will do what's best. And for me, other people also want to do what's best. And if they make a decision, I will support it. if I believe it can make a difference. And so I demitted office at a time when I should not have been because my contract, my 5-year contract was not finished. And I remember I called the entire UB institution into the gymnasium one afternoon. I had from PG, I had them come from wherever they were, and I took them into that auditorium. And I remember telling them, because when I had gone away for the university, and when I came back, there was all this thing about Dr. Lewis, we hear you're going to be leaving, you're not going to be president anymore. You know how Belize is. Information somehow gets out. I had left for about a week with a team. We had visited a couple of universities abroad. And when I came back, I had all these students coming in because we had also some pretty strong students at the University of Belize who didn't sit around, and when things weren't going the way they should, they would act out and they would let it be known that they didn't agree. And I remember when I came back, I went into the office and some students came up and they said, Dr. Lewis, we hear you're going to be leaving us. I knew about it. I knew about it before I went on the trip that I went on. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't have time to do anything at that time. And when I came back, I was greeted with this, we hear you're leaving. And I said, you know what? We have all these faculties, there's PG, there's Belize City where there are programs, there's Bemapan, there's Central Farm. I got to get to all of them. And I didn't see how I could. If I could send out a bulletin, I could send out information, but I felt I needed to talk to people about what had happened with that. And I had them all come to the gym one afternoon. And I remember I stood up on the stage in the gym. All the students, all the faculty, everybody had come to Belmopan to hear the president. And my message to them was that I would no longer, I told them as a body that I would no longer be president. And I remember I had to appeal to the students because the student government wanted to go on strike or something. And I remember calling them. And I remember I told them, don't go on the streets demonstrating to get a president back in office. And I stayed on at UB. I didn't leave. I continued. I have had to deal with these kinds of incendiary situations. And I've always felt comfortable with them. And like I said, I feel that my skills as a communicator has been one of my strengths, and it has helped me to learn to handle those situations without being overstressed, because sometimes people ask me, how do you get any sleep at night? How do you manage this, all these things that are happening around you? But I also had a very wonderful partner. He was there always. He would drive me up in the morning if I'm in Belize City, drive back to his work that was in Belize City, come back in the evening and pick me up or stay overnight with me and come back to work again in Belize City in the morning. And everybody knew him for that. I mean, Dr. Lewis we knew who he was because he was always there, always with me. And it is these kinds of, situations, I think. I've been blessed. I keep saying that. And B was one of my blessings. It was one of my big challenges, but it has made me who I am in many ways. I grew up without a dad. I grew up with a mom who was basically, she was a spinster and she was basically a housekeeper. But I'm telling you, I always wish she had lived long enough to see where her child has gone. Because what has happened to me, it's not about my doing. It's about Providence and the people who I have met and who I have engaged with along the way. And I'm eternally grateful for that. A university for me is a place where faculty, the staff, the students are of paramount importance. Presidents, I think, they have a juggling act to do. Faculty and staff have needs of their own. Students have their own needs. A president's position it's not a popularity contest thing for presidents. Presidents need to be there to support. When it comes to advice, very often you have faculty or your administrators who have advice to give. I always say that you can take advice. Sometimes I had situations where it was a gut feeling for me that I do something and I may get advice to maybe not do it or do something else by a faculty member or by an administrator. I always went with my gut feeling because I said if I must, and not always my gut feeling, but often, because I always say if I must make a mistake, I don't want to make somebody else's mistake. I want to make my own mistake because it's the worst thing. And I always would take time to, when I'd get advice or get support as president, I would take time to think it through before I acted on it. Find support where you can find, you'll never be liked by everybody and you will never satisfy everybody. There's a 20% who might really like you and love you. There might be a 20% who totally dislike you. And there's an 80% in the middle of that, or however the math works out, that should be your focus. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for everybody. And your job has got to be to make everybody feel that as president, you're supported. People say, don't ask what your country can be for you, ask what you can be for your country. UB has been a challenge. I mean, it has survived, and I think that's one of the big things. Despite all the challenges and all the stresses of administration and all of that, with that little, university, it has come out shining, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. UB will hold a special place in my heart. This 25th anniversary is a time for reflection, but also it's a time for looking forward. I would like to express my gratitude for the opportunity to have served this institution through its early period of humble beginnings, and I am filled with optimism for its future. The poet in me drives me to share this excerpt from a poem I wrote in 2004 during my tenure. UB is more than just a name, much more than buildings, books, and grades. It transcends time. It defies space. It is enduring, a grand idea. It cannot be confined or chained. Its influence radiates near, far, wide, permeating these walls, this land, our skies. It soars aloft. It rides the tides, transforming, reconstructing, metamorphosing lives. Thank you.